All right, let's go ahead and get started. We are in the home stretch. This is breakout session number 6 in the data analytics track. Before we get started, and for the last time, let me thank the sponsors for making the 14th annual Taste of IT happen. Without our sponsors, this would not be possible. So if you've not had the opportunity, please stop by the booths and say hello and thank you to them. So let's go ahead and get started. Over the past 17 years, Jan has been helping organizations become data-driven by making the best use of IT. During his 14-year career with Procter & Gamble, he led numerous IT transformation programs. He set and executed data and analytics strategies and oversaw a multi-million-dollar portfolio of global projects. 3 years ago, Jan joined Ligero. Of course, I was going to kill that after I get your name right. A professional services company focused on data-driven enterprise transformation. He relocated from Warsaw, Poland to Cincinnati in February of 2019. Join me in welcoming Jan Venda as he discusses Agile Analytics framework based on large CPG company success stories. Jan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate it. Can you just let me know that I can be heard well? Just to make sure that...
Loud and clear. Yep, sounds good.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you for joining. It's good to see you all here. Hope you all feel well and safe and healthy, and also that you had a good day. That's almost last session, so I appreciate for those who still stayed on and joined this one. And today we are going to talk how to get value from analytics, how to maximize it, based on real life example of some work that I did implementing this Agile framework for analytics. And within this whole session, I will be sharing like real practical experience, and it will be very transparent what worked, what didn't work. If you have any questions after that, feel free to ask. Even though I'm using PowerPoint template from Linkaro and I work for the company, obviously, this is definitely not a sales session. I'm not selling today anything. And so today it's more about giving value to you so that you know what are the things that work and how you can also use it in your own business. So agenda-wise, I will talk about the value and how we approach it in IT projects and analytic projects from the short introduction. Then I will show this real life example of what was the challenge and describe the solution in detail. That will be most of the session for today, eventually results and some time for Q&A. So let's get started. So that was the introduction already, so I will pretty much skip that part. So thank you, Don, for doing that for me. Now let's start talking about first the value within the analytics and how we actually drive that. This is important because that's foundation for the whole thing, why we do it. And when you think about value, in traditional IT projects, oftentimes the way it works is that what you have is I'm just want to make sure. Do you see a slide with traditional IT approach?
I do, and we see your cursor moving as well.
Perfect. Just want to make sure the slides are changing. All right. So traditional IT projects oftentimes are being agreed in terms of what will be done with IT leaders and some people from the business sides and will decide what will be the scope to deliver this value. And this is a good approach. It works super well for well-defined projects where there are clear processes. We know how those people that will use the solution will eventually benefit from this. So there's some merit to it. This process at the same time struggles when this whole scope changes, expectations are not clear, and it's hard to link this value with what is being done. And well, common way on the market is like, let's go agile, right? So when we were exploring that option, one of the first things I saw, since we were focusing on the value and how to deliver that, was how the value can be delivered faster in an agile project versus the waterfall project. So in agile, you kind of get the value over time as you deliver the project. With the waterfall, you kind of comes at the end when you release the whole thing and to more and more people. And that's, well, that makes sense conceptually. But at the same time, my experiences, well, was showing something else. So from what I saw was that when I tried to draw a different line, right? So this is a declared value, what we're hoping to get in this, and then what is the scope? This is the blue line, okay? Over time of the project, from my experiences, the way it works is that, well, initially when we kick off the project, we are expecting certain value, right? And that is linked to a scope that we will deliver as part of the project. What will project actually deliver? Then people start to talk about the project, what will be done, some design sessions, maybe matching, mapping, things like that. And eventually like, well, but we're missing that, element. It was not in the requirements, but let's add it because it's important. And so that's good. But at the same time, they discover a number of things that, well, will not make it to the project because are too difficult, too expensive, so are rejected. So we say, well, that's okay, let's continue the project, but I'm seeing less value from this. And that whole cycle keeps on happening as people discover more and more what will be done. Eventually, it gets to the point of the most important part of any waterfall project, which is UAT, when we expose the solution to the actual users, right? So first time they see it, they're like, oh, but that's not what I expected, right? This is missing this functionality, that functionality. I was expecting this and that and everything. And there's no way I'm going to sign off on this project until those things are there. So that's where you have a big scope creep, typical situation. And the scope of the project grows even bigger. At the same time, we are approaching this whole important moment of going live. We go live, and then more people see it, not just the project team, not the people that were verifying the solution, but also crowd of people. And they come with all kinds of things like, well, but in my business doesn't work, my process is a little bit different, I cannot really use it, or for this to work for me, I would need those things, but the project is done, so we cannot deliver those, maybe release to, etc. So eventually, when you will see is that from the declared value down to when you finish with the project, well, it's way lower, plus the scope is way higher, right? And well, that's the practical experience that I had. So I hope that this chart can solve it. And what we started doing is experimenting. And this whole talk today, what I'm going to focus the most is about the link between how fast and how cheap you can experiment and how much value you will get out of it. So if you want to maximize the value in a data analytics project, so not just any project, not just any IT project, what I would say is experiment more, experiment faster, experiment cheaper, because that's how, even though that path will be not that smooth, eventually you reach the maximum value that you can reach. And this whole situation on how to do this thing is what we'll be talking today, because it's easy to show that you want to show different version of it, you want to have people work with the actual system and explore the needs when they use it, but in practice it's not that easy, right? One other thing that you need to think of as you experiment is how to do it fast, so that the speed and costs thing works well. And that might sound obvious, but it's not as obvious as it is here. From common sense is not common practice. So first thing is, the reason why you experiment and the reason why you try to do it fast is that you should decide. So not just experiment and continue experimenting, but you should decide what is the outcome of experiments and whether you should move forward or not. If it's success, well, yes, absolutely, that's obvious. You should reapply, you should scale that solution. But at the same time, the watch out is don't declare success too early. We've seen many solutions in this whole model that I will present later on, where something looks super attractive, but eventually after 3 months, people stop using it because, well, it was fun for a time. It was showing some cool things. It was maybe attractive to show to other people, but eventually it was not actually adding value after you use it once or twice. And we ended up, stopping number of solutions because of that they seem like good ideas, but we were happy that we did not invest too much in them, and we were okay to stop them. And you need to be able to do it. So that's, I will not mention this later on, so kind of spending a little bit more time on this, because most of the time I'll say how to do this, but it doesn't work if you don't remember about those elements. One other thing that I wanted to mention, again, practical example, practical things I want to share today. How do you know whether you should stop something or you should continue? Sometimes people will say, that's a great solution, I want to keep on using it. But I would say sometimes you also need to look at your gut feel and verify those things if you don't feel like this is what is happening. And there are some other reasons for that. And one of the ways to do it is to use this Nile crocodile test. So there are those crocodiles in the Nile River in Egypt, right? And one of my friends, this is why I call it this Nile crocodile test, because that's how we use it. It's a kind of code name, really. And the way it worked, he was sending monthly status reports with the status of the business, how things are going, lots of analysis, lots of effort that was put into this. But he was not sure whether people actually read it and use it, and he felt like he's wasting time doing this. So what eventually he decided to do is he challenged his manager, said, you know what, I don't think people are using it, I don't think it's good. But he heard, no, keep on doing this, super important. We have general managers on the audience of this. They're very interested in the status of the business. We have to continue. So what he did, he listened, he continued, but at the same time, he did this test. He said in this monthly report that he put a whole paragraph about how the sales growth is correlated with the number of crocodiles in the Nile River in Egypt. And he was like describing this correlation, which didn't make any sense, obviously, because, well, this didn't have anything to do with crocodiles in Nile River. But since nobody noticed, that was later on a proof that, well, the crocodile test shown that this is not actually being used. Nobody's reading this. And yeah, maybe people just, scan through it, look at it, but nobody seriously is using this. So the same test we did, sometimes by accident, sometimes intentionally, with our solutions, where we would even intentionally stop refreshing the data to see how long does it take for people to react. If, the same day people say the data is not refreshed, what's going on, and this escalate as an issue, well, that's obvious. It's super important. If somebody comes 6 months later and say, well, but data was not refreshed for last 6 months, then, well, you kind of get an idea. So that's, and again, I mean, sometimes by accident, sometimes intentionally, we actually did that. So it's not purely theoretical example. Let's move on to the actual business challenge that we have. So, kind of the background, we try to maximize the value. We see experimentation as the way to do it. And, well, our leaders also see that, right? And they said, well, we want you to experiment, we want to iterate, and we want to deliver solutions faster. At the time, we were delivering large global projects that were taking, 1 year, sometimes 2 years. And this was, marvelous in terms of engineering, but, well, it just took a lot of time. And sometimes the needs of people changed because we took so long to deliver that. The challenge that we got was deliver this in 90 days. I want to see the time to value to reduce to 90 days. I don't want to wait for people to get the benefits, 1 or 2 years later down the road. And good thing is that we had top management sponsorship, or I should say expectation. And there were some other expectations in terms of, growing the value instead of this whole chart that I was showing you, less and less value, that we want to show that next and next deployment, people capture more and more value out of this, make it more business focused, make it more based on the actual demos, not documents, and also don't make it cost more than what we're paying today. So not easy to do that, but, well, we started with diagnosis. So what's preventing us from running fast? And well, if that's not readable, no worries, because I just want to highlight a few things. So first thing is too slow, too expensive. We already knew we want to iterate. We already knew we want to run smaller projects faster and deliver dedicated applications that solve specific business problems. So that part we knew. We just didn't know how to practically do it. So sounds like a good idea, but how do you actually do it? In real life, what happened is that we were outsourcing all development. We had IT people that knew the work, but we didn't have capacity to do all the coding and development. So we were leveraging various partners to develop that, doing all the RFPs, PRs, all the vendor engagement process, usual stuff. Unfortunately, that was slow, and from the moment I ask for the people, I need to wait 2-3 months to actually get people ready. And I mean ready. I don't mean that confirmation that we will do it. I mean people actually with access and kind of ready to work. And well, maybe, hopefully, it's not the case anymore for your company. Well, right now probably it's not there anymore, but at the time that was the reality. We had development environment which was well, it was very well structured. We were running Wall Street reporting out of it, so kind of important. But at the same time, it was very rigid because of this, because you cannot mess it up. And there were 30 people that needed to provide their approvals, many people in different time zones. All in all, it took 1 month for one migration to be done. So kind of crazy. You do 1 day of development and you need to wait 1 month before this actually goes into production. Again, hopefully not anymore, but at the time that was the reality. Then there was the whole thing about the requirements, misunderstood, kept on changing. A lot of problematic discussions with this. And also funding was kind of a challenge because we had this whole gated process, very well structured. But again, it took a while to negotiate between, what people expect to get out of it and what investment level is going to be with this. And eventually it took so long that people thought we were already working on the solution for last 2 months while we were still negotiating who will do what type of thing. So these are all the problems that we were trying to solve with this. And the solution, well, that's what we're going to talk through the rest of the session. So what we decided to do there is to split into three kind of like separate focus areas. One was the methodology. Well, clearly we needed to change the way how we deliver the whole thing from a methodology perspective. Second one was this whole partner engagement. Well, that didn't work. I kind of wait 3 months for the team to be ready. And then the other one was platform, which again, 1 month for migration doesn't really fly. So that was our whole Agile Analytics framework. And let's go through what we actually did with this, what worked, what didn't work. One circle at a time. Okay, so let's start with methodology. That should be simple, right? Agile was there since the 90s, right? So just let's pick Scrum as a methodology, implement it, and you're done. Theoretically, yes, but practically, Scrum is a iterative development methodology. It doesn't address everything. It's a methodology that assumes I have people ready, they want to do stuff, let's build it. And that is not typically how it works in many companies. You need some, buy-in from the sponsors, from the business. Somebody needs to pay for it. You need to design the architecture, data architecture, information architecture, technology architecture. You need to, get the funding confirmed. You need to have the team ready. I mean, there are a lot of things that need to happen before you can even start, which, well, obviously that whole methodology doesn't address or even mention at all. And then there's the aspect of what happens after you got your potentially shippable product, because the only thing it says is that we built something and that potentially can be used. Should be good because somebody probably looked at it at the end of a sprint, but it's very lean on testing, verification, assumes we do a demo one day and we're done, right? Doesn't really work like this in analytics project. In our situation, we had operations team, which was separate from everybody else. We needed to make this whole solution supportable to meet their standards. We need also to prove the value that we committed and, also have somebody that will own it later on. So none of those things were handled there, and we needed to design this whole thing for us. Now, I will not spend too much time on this one because I realized that is super context specific. And every company works a little bit different, so you have to figure out for yourself. What I'm trying to do here is to tell you that, well, you can take certain methodologies, but you need to add certain elements to it. So for us, what we added is this whole inception part of the process where we describe how we will document what we call product vision, which was before we even did product backlogs, sprints, and everything. We wanted to try what is the idea even for our sponsors, for the people to understand what we're trying to do, maybe do some mockups, etc. We also had a structured discovery program where we were checking what data is available, what is not available, what we need to do, is it even realistic, etc. Whole approach on how we map what we are doing with the whole budgeting gates process, etc. And something interesting that was called Sprint Zero, or even later on we added Sprint -1, which is what happens before you actually start regular development work. In our case, that was the whole preparation of the environments, all the setup, initial connections, accesses, and things like that. So that was the important phase that we had in the project, and we had this well structured. And then another one was what happens after the project. We had this whole process that we called solidification, which was how do we take from what we did here to something that can be supportable. I will mention some parts of it later on, so not going into details right now, so that we can release this whole thing to operation, capturing the value, etc. So all those elements were there that eventually gave us like the scale solution, which again, I will mention later on as we talk other elements. But what I'm trying to highlight again is, well, yeah, Scrum is not enough. There are some other elements you have to take care, treat it as a, sample checklist of the things you can do. If you want to learn more what we did, how it worked, happy to connect separately. All right, so that was the first circle. Second one is development team. And if you remember, we were outsourcing all this development work. We didn't have enough resources internally to do all this development. And yeah, I didn't want to wait 3 months to get the team. So I used this sponsorship that we had from the board to change the rules of the game completely. So what I did is I said, you know what? Let me say what I need, and then let others figure it out. I mean, the partners, essentially. So I said, I want to have people in 5 days. If I say on Monday that I want next Monday the team ready, I want those 5 people with those skills. I want to get those people. I want them to be experienced with my technology stack, which I defined upfront. I want them to know our methodology and how we work in Agile way. I want them to know our environment, have all the access to our environments, and I want to minimize paperwork because, well, I don't want it at a cost of spending all my days reviewing some papers to do it. So these were my expectations. And at the same time, well, I'm asking for certain things. Not easy to have people ready in 5 days when I need them, right? So what do I give back? Well, I'm saying, okay, so whoever takes this from the partners will get the old area of the analytics space that we're doing those applications in. We'll get minimal guaranteed level of people that will not go below in any moment in time of using this whole framework. And also that's for long-term partnership. Initial contract was for 2 years with the possibility to extend. So we did RFP. We asked all our big partners and a few smaller partners to participate in this. Big part of this, who has an idea how to practically do it? Not theoretically, but how to practically do it. We eventually decided to select one of a smaller partner, not the biggest ones that we had. And that actually worked very well for us. One of the models that was there and that we used eventually was how to balance the fully kind of fixed, always the same people team versus this whole flexible approach where I can exchange people and number of them anytime. So the model worked in a way that instead of committing one way or the other, we said we'll have this core team. with all the critical roles. We will have all the key people there, like, well, actually, I'll show you who in next slide. All those critical roles that will retain the knowledge about what we're doing, how things work, and we'll onboard new people from the Flex team. And also, we commit from our side that we will not be changing those people for at least a year, if not two. And that same commitment we wanted from that partner that was supplying those. And then we had on top of that this whole Flex team, which was all about this agility, right? So super fast staffing, quick reaction to our demands and needs. We can reduce to 0 anytime we want. So I can, scale 20 people 1 month and minus 20 next month. With the monthly changes. And that's what is, illustrated here. That I always have this core team. In our case, that was 20 people, 20 FTEs. And the Flex team that can go up and down any moment in time, depending on the projects, on the needs. And just to give you an idea on the scale, that was quite a scale because I said, well, when we launch it, whoever wins this will get the benefit of doing all those projects. We were actually going, eventually the scale of this Flex, actually both Core and Flex, was like in three-digit number of FTEs. Okay, so this was large level engagements, a lot of projects done in parallel. So this whole program, when it kicked off and we started adding those projects, that was actually fluctuating quite a bit, and proven to work. This whole expectation of staffing in 5 working days. Throughout the 6 years, when the whole engagement, because it was extended twice for 2 years, so 6 years in total, the partner missed only twice throughout, hundreds of engagement and requests. So that's the model worked well in practice. Core team versus Flex team. So let me show you who are the people that we kept in the core team and the Flex team. So in the core team, which means those people that we always kept, the same people, same names, not same roles, same names, same individuals, was, well, all the program management folks, because, well, we wanted same people to manage this for us for long term, that they knew what we're doing this. They were like our extension, especially like my colleague who was running this for me, program ongoing. And then we also had architects, which were always there because, again, we had some standards we wanted them to follow. So continuity of knowledge and experience was important. Also data architects and data stewards, because, again, there were certain elements in terms of data management that we want them to stick to. And there were a lot of other people who were like, fully flexible, all of them, like most of developers, and those roles which are plenty in terms of the number of people, and go up and down. And some people were mixed, like, some Scrum Masters. Some of them we kept because, again, we wanted them to know our methodology, or some business analysts because we wanted them to know our environment. But some were as part of the Flex team. So that's kind of more or less give you an idea of who was in which type of a team. And that's, again, that worked well. So I'm sharing this as actually that part worked well. One thing that, well, initially didn't work well at all because, well, that was an unexpected challenge, was that when you move from few big projects that you run in parallel to dozens of projects. So initially I had, one project manager running one big project, or some big projects were even run, certain parts of them by few PMs and few owners from the team, right? That was the setup. When we moved to this new way of working, we had one person working parallel on 3 projects. So instead of 3 people on one, we had, one person on 3 projects. And there were just tons and tons of those. But because not only they work a lot of projects in parallel, but they kept changing from, 1 month to another. We were starting new projects, finishing the previous ones, killing the ones that didn't work, starting new ones that did work, experimentation, right? So that is super hard to manage, like, honestly. When you move from this thing to this thing, I mean, you really have to invest in good portfolio management and being able to know exactly who is working on what, where are all those resources, how much we paying, controlling all the costs of it. We had expectations in the company that we will give spending accuracy forecast of 2% of accuracy. So that's a pretty tough. Even if you know exactly what you're doing, 2% within a quarter, that's really hard to know exactly how much you're going to spend. But that's the level of control we're expected to have. So eventually ended up, actually that was built even by this partner that we work with, but we had this tool where every single project was listed. We had all the milestones, billing milestones, all the people named, resources, how much time they spend, how the projection of how much they're willing to spend, what the plan, where we adding people, where we moving people, all of it, which allowed all those people working on those projects to manage their own projects, right, and know like who they need and verify and approve every single billing milestone, but allowed me, for example, to look across the whole program, across all of those projects, and see exactly where we are at. Like that's how I know how many people we had in any moment in time, and even that if there was like three-digit number of people, I still know exactly how many were there and how it was going up and down, and then was able to project costs, list all the projects, all engagement, etc. So that's initially was tough, but eventually we got it under control. And once we did, like the problem was solved completely. Like I wanted to have the similar tool even in the area where we did some bigger projects and it was not as structured. So that one actually worked beautifully at the end. Initially, yeah, that was difficult. All right, moving on. Third point was platform. I mentioned that we had this platform where it took forever to migrate, but you probably don't realize when I say 1 month to migrate, well, it's 1 month from one environment to another. And different companies may organize differently. In our case, we had development where we did all the development, obviously. And then we had QA tests where all the testing, QA testing, unit testing, or system integrate testing was happening. And then eventually we had separate environment for all the user acceptance tests, which was tough to migrate to because for us, it was a first test also whether we can migrate. Our whole, I'm saying platform, but there was like a set of many technologies. This is pre-cloud era, okay? We had everything on premise and we had to manage this, configure this, and there was a set of technology that we had to put together. So it was not easy to manage this whole thing. And this migration, yeah, there's the reason why it took a month. One is like all the approval, all the process, but also the whole, complexity of the setup. And then eventually, before we move everything to production, since this was, super important system there, was threat reporting there, we needed to verify everything, and it took just forever. So all in all, if I'm lucky, in 2.5 months, I can get something migrated from when I have it developed, which is not cool. What we changed is, well, pretty much everything. So what we did is went down to 2 environments, which we set specifically for this whole agile development. So it was separate set of environments here. And remember, this is pre-cloud era. So it's not like I go Azure, set up a new resource group and, add more resources that are copy, duplicate something. No, I cannot do it. We actually had to physically buy some machines and make some investments to be able to do it. But we knew what is the value of this. So actually we got approval to make it happen. And the way it works was, there was development environment, and there was what we called production environment. So production is like somewhere between prototype and production. And the reason is that it was not a prototype because it was something that was exposed to real business users. People were doing business on this. It was not just a test. It was not like, oh, I'll show you and I will come back 6 months later with the actual product. No, they were actually using it. And for us, the most important part of this whole production was to verify the business case. Remember this whole experimentation I started from? Well, we wanted to be able to do those business-driven tests. Don't focus that much on technology at this stage. Do it even quick and dirty, get it out there, make it look like a final product, which I will talk in a second, next slide, how to do that. And then verify if it's good. go on. If it's not good, stop it. Be willing to stop it. And I also mentioned this whole manual semi-automated data in the next slide. So that was production. Once this was good enough and this was being used, and to be clear, this was not just a phase in the project. What I'm saying is that we could deliver the whole first release of the solution within 30 days. There was the first version of it, and then we, in every 3-4 weeks, we're giving new version of it, until in 90 days we were actually delivering the whole thing, the first release, I mean. And that first release was out there for people to use. If we decided to work on it later, we could, but then there was a decision whether we want to continue in this whole production space, or we want to move to like a regular, let's say, environment. Why we would do it? Well, if we proven already the value, if we that there's a need for scale, so for example, we want to now deploy it globally, or we want to refresh it, a few times a day, if the requirements are stable already, it's a good moment to move it to this regular thing. Now, the way we did that is that we did not stop the production solution. So actually, people could still use this and get the value of using this solution. In parallel, we were running this technical project, which was purely technical. We didn't even ask for requirements, right? Because, well, we had a working solution here. And the focus of this one was make it scalable, make it automated, make it supportable, and also maybe, reduce the kind of unit cost of this when we scale it. And you will see why in the next slide, because there's some cost to scaling with this semi-automated way. And then, yes, even if it took long, that is okay, because people still could realize the value here. So that was kind of the big trick, like keep running this, but then in the background do this, and then switch the people to the new solution once it's done, technically proven, and then we can scale it further or reap the benefits of automation. So that's this whole environment thing. That was game changer. And that allows us to do things that we were not able to do in the other environments. We could set our own rules in this production space. Now, I mentioned this semi-automated thing, and there's when people which are very, very technically focused, and I am also technically focused, so so I do have a lot of technical experience as well. You want, as an engineer, always make things great, amazing, fully automated, and fantastic. And when you hear about, oh, let's make this in Excel, you're like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Well, the point is that when your objective is to prove the value, your objective is to prove the value. Your objective is not to build the most sophisticated technical solution. And we intentionally had this carbon phase, which was carbon because it was people-based solution, like people actually messaging the data. We had some BPS people in low-cost location preparing the data for us, refreshing this regularly, and that was okay. I mean, we use Excel, we use NIME, we used Spotfire at the time for this one. Which big value of this was that it had this embedded data in memory database, which you could load from any source and then stored it, and it was super, super fast. So it looked like, for the people that use the solution, it did look like a final solution. Our users would not see the difference whether we gave them this production solution with the manual data or we give them fully automated. They could not tell, right? Because for them, it was like, it looks same thing, right? Now, in the backend, we had some hamsters like preparing data, but in practice, well, that's that was allowing to give us the value fast. Now, I mentioned that there was a cost of scaling in this mode. Well, yes. So if you engage your partners to do your BPS type of services to manage this data, prepare this data, unfortunately, well, that doesn't scale well. So if you want to scale a lot, then there's a moment in time where it actually makes sense to automate it, even if other reasons are not dictating this. That's a good reason to do it. So we have to balance those two things, but that allows you to move fast and kind of be cautious where you are. All right, almost last one in the platform and the overall framework. Now, that might sound a little bit philosophical, but it has huge ramifications. And I don't want to demonstrate, or I don't have time to talk the details of how this was realized in practice. But I mentioned this whole production, and I just show it as a very simple thing, like, oh, two environments, that's it. But there was more to it. One of the things that we did is the whole philosophy of building the applications. We said no interdependencies. And your typical model, at least at the time, was reuse, 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 right? This whole one version of truth in one in enterprise data warehouse. Let's finally, have one data source globally across the whole corporate world that every sales number is there, which I have to give it is important. But then that one sales number is not enough because you need to kind of add something to it, add projections, our indexes, our other things and targets and compare versus targets and a lot of other measures, which I would call them as subjective measures because that's not objective truth. And that's what happens, right? You have this sales data here, you do all those transformations, and then people say, I like this data that you're reporting this whole solution, which is already prepared for reporting. Let me use it for my new application. And somebody else, oh, I like it as well. I'm going to use it as well. And there's other data that I will use it. And what happens is that you create all those interdependencies. And it might sound like, well, that's a good thing. We're just reusing what is already here. And yeah, reuse-wise, that's great. But it has serious consequences. It introduces super complex change management and slows you down like hell. I mean, the worst thing that can happen in the environment where you want to move fast is that people go crazy and they impact each other. One project impacts another project, especially if we're running dozens of projects in parallel, right? That is super important. It's like iOS App Store. iOS is an app store done by Apple with certain rules. And one of the rules is interdependency. No one application can impact another application. They are sandbox, so they cannot really interact with each other and impact each other. We wanted to recreate the same thing. So what we did is like, reuse the data, like the objective one, but then do all the manipulations, calculations, transformations of the data until you report this data just for your own solution. So if the solution is about analytical pricing solution to do better pricing mix, okay, then use that. If you need similar data in your pricing execution measurement where you're checking retailer prices and you want to see how that one works, well, there's a lot of similar data, but what I'm saying, don't take data from here, take data from the very source and recalculate it yourself. There's a cost to it, obvious one. You have to recalculate the same things multiple times. Maybe you have to store it multiple times, but I'm saying it's worth it because that gives you speed. And that's what we needed in this whole production environment. We needed speed, and especially in today's world. I mean, your biggest cost is not your storage or CPU these days, especially in the times of cloud. Your biggest cost is, the people that you work with, those resources that build it, highly qualified resources, the time you spend on it, and the opportunity cost that you have there by not doing it. So that is a money well spent if you repeat that. Still, you can reuse a code that does things and version it appropriately. Again, I can go into details of this if there are some people interested of this. But you are okay with, not high reuse of this. So that's what gives you optimization for speed, not for reuse. And that's what we used also. And that's how we design every single technology environment for production. All right, final point. And that's showing something interesting with the human nature that we discovered. Kind of intentionally, not intentionally, but I found it as one of most fascinating things. Traditional way of governance and checking whether things go right is have developer develop something, have somebody else review it, verify it, check against all the standards, and then only then, when this is confirmed and approved, move it to production. And typically, those people are separate from those people. Somebody is doing, another person is checking what they did, right? That's like the standard way to do it. We actually implemented something else, what I called reactive governance. And the way it works is that, well, actually you change the order of things. You still have the rules, like you want people to comply with certain standards, how solutions are built, and yes, you have documented them, all good stuff, but we told the development team, we want you to stick to those rules, but we are not going to check whether you do. Well, at least not proactively. We're not going to stop you to go to production with this solution. You can go ahead and do it as fast as you want. This is your project. Move as fast as you need to move. That's why they were able to migrate within 1 day to production, because, well, there was nobody in the middle. Now, there's like magical trick here that happens. And that is, you have a power to move to production anytime you want, or production in this case, but when it doesn't work, it's on you. Like, there's nobody else. This is a big problem with this model. This model, you lose accountability. Developer makes a mistake. They don't find it during the review. It goes to production, and this whole thing, stops working. And then it's like, well, they will say, well, the developer made the mistake. He's the bad one, the guilty one, right? Developers say, well, yes, I did a mistake, but, well, those guys should find it before it goes to production. So, like, where do we fix it? And then, like, all discussion between back and forth between the parties. Time lost, doesn't make any sense. Then oftentimes, people that can migrate and fix the production are different people that can do this. That was not the case here. Development team could do anything in production within their sandbox environment. Remember sandbox from previous slide? And that was their responsibility. If they screw it up, they had to fix it, even if it was middle of the night because some other region was using it. Okay, so that was their responsibility. And yes, we did reactive governance. So it was not like, yes, we trust you, but we also will check whether we should continue trusting you, whether you're still complying with the rules that we set. But the big difference was we did not stop them. And we proven, and that was the interesting discovery, we proven that the quality of the solution and stability of our production platform was actually higher than this solution. Actually, we had more production issues here with more people doing the support and the reviews, way more, than in this situation when people were responsible for their own thing. So kind of magic happened here. Again, you need to create an environment and the rules for this to be able to do it, but we had that, so we could actually execute on this. So that's the whole platform with all the examples. So finally, well, the results, that's always important because we did it for a reason, right? So this is the same expectation that we had. So not only we went down to 30 days, actually this was one of the key measures, and we had a scorecard where we measured that. And after a while, where we kind of get proficient, most of the solutions were already out there below 30 days. Again, the first version of it, we were then iterating on this, typically for a few more sprints, and those sprints could be 3 to 4 weeks. In BI, were 2 or 1 week sprints, just too short, so we were using 3-4 weeks there. We also saw that, yes, there was a value growing and the business relevancy because of the way we work, how close we work, but also, how many solutions we built in the first 2 years. So that was a lot that was done, and then the whole program was extended 2 times, started for 2 years, then next 2 years, 6 years, the same kind of form. Evolving, but same idea. And then, yes, absolutely, we had working solutions and demos because, well, I was just describing this. In terms of the costs, I said, again, I promised transparency, so I'm giving you transparency the way it works. Eventually, yes, but the first year, no. For a simple reason. This was pre-cloud era. So we had to invest in environments. In today's world, certain things would be easier. We could use separation through, Docker, Kubernetes, use the clouds to duplicate the environment. So certain things today are way easier than they were at the time. But when we were doing this, there was just not enough big database available from any cloud provider at the time. So that's all I had for you today. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yep, we're up against the closing marks. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to get you back for some more of those war stories, because there's a lot there I think we could unpack with you. So absolutely, thank you as always. It's great to hear from you, and great subject. Special thanks to Round Tower and Ahead, our featured sponsors for this session. And if you'll go back to the main Technology First platform, the 435 closing remarks are happening. They'll also be giving away gifts. And again, thank you, Jan, for a great presentation. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye bye.